Hello, everyone. Hello, Database. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give it one more minute before we get started. Thanks for joining us today, and I'd love to hear where you're joining us from. If you want to drop your location in the chat, I'm happy to check out where everyone's joining us from around the world. I'm joining from the Bay Area. No surprise there for those of you who know me or the Hive. My name is Maddie Watt. I'm the Senior Manager of the People and Programs at the Hive. And we've got an incredible panel lined up for you guys today. We are going to be deep diving into some very interesting topics, maybe a little bit dystopian, a little bit dark, but hey, it's 2020, right? It's right on trend and right on theme. So it's going to be a really great, fun conversation. And I'm going to just give it one more minute before I kind of go into the ground rules, and then I'll very quickly talk about what the Hive think tank does before I go ahead and pass the virtual mic over to Kamesh Raghavendra, the Hive's Chief Product Officer, as well as today's moderator. So thank you all for being here. Ground rules really quick. Please be respectful in the chat. Please refrain from product plugs or from recruiting for your startup. We really appreciate you cooperating with us. We love questions. We definitely want you guys to ask questions. No question is too silly or dumb or weird. The more out there, especially for this conversation, the better. So we highly encourage some off-the-wall sort of stuff. Make this really fun, shake things up. And to ask a question, I'm begging and asking you to please use the Q&A button. It is located at the bottom of your screen underneath the video. It says Q&A. That way, when you ask it in there, it's all collected in one place, and that allows you guys as audience members to upvote different questions that you want to see answered. And it also makes it easier for Kamesh, our moderator, to see all the questions in one place. So if I see you asking a question in the chat, I'm going to ping you directly and ask you to please use the Q&A feature. Thank you very much for cooperating. And lastly, this session is being recorded and will be available to view later on the Hive's YouTube channel. I will be dropping the link to that in the chat. And if you are going to follow along on social media, which we appreciate and love very much, please use the hashtag HiveData or tag us at HiveData. And without further ado, I'm going to jump into what the Hive think tank does. Okay, so the Hive think tank. We are an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, corporations, and thought leaders. We are currently in the pandemic bringing you virtual events basically every week. We do events that are mostly focused on our investment thesis, which has to do obviously with AI, as well as different things like blockchain, enterprise, industrials. Sometimes we branch out and do things related to sustainability or even fashion and tech and fashion. And we do a lot of stuff with insurance and insurtech and financials and data privacy and security and a lot of the stuff that you're going to hear today. So we have a bunch of conversations that we've had previously that are available on our YouTube channel if you want to kind of catch up to see where we've been. And we would love for you to join the Hive Think Tank. And the best way to keep in the loop on what we are doing is to join our meetup group. So I will drop the link to that. That way you can stay up to date on all the events that we're doing. We also have a Medium site where we publish blogs periodically that are kind of related to the events that we do and the things that we invest in. So we'd love to see you there as well, and I will send a link for that. Also want to thank our sponsors. A huge thank you to our sponsors, namely today, thank you to Avanta Ventures. Vivian is holding it down for Avanta today. We love working with Avanta, and we love working with all of our sponsors. So if you would like to get in contact with me, my email's there at the bottom. I can also put it in the chat. Would love to talk to you about sponsorship. Or if you are interested in doing a webinar with us or contributing to our blog, that's another great reason to get in contact with me. And without further ado, I want to pass over the virtual mic over to Kamesh.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. A warm welcome to all of you who have joined us. The Hive is a venture studio. We invest and work very closely with entrepreneurs, particularly focused on targeting the early stage risks that startup face, risks associated with technology, leadership, product market fit, etc. So this venture studio model that we have going on not only enables our portfolio companies with capital, but also enables us to work shoulder to shoulder and help our entrepreneurs build great companies. Um, uh, Matty, if you could go to the next slide. Our portfolio focuses on very specific areas of interest to us. They include enterprise applications and business processes, digital risk, which happens to be also related to our topic of the panel today. A lot of interest in industrial verticals. We have interest in the edge and all the devices that are coming into our lives that make a lot of new ambient experiences kind of be developed and enabled for us. We're also equally interested in digital health. Recently, we've included two companies in our portfolio. One company called Digital Canary, which focuses on making physical spaces self-aware and responsive, particularly relevant in the coming months as we all start going back to workplaces and would expect a lot of digital health and safety enablement in the workspaces that we're going to hopefully start going back to soon. We are also in the process of adding a company to our portfolio that will focus on industrial field services, especially enabling technicians in industrial field services to offer much better, much more digitally informed customer service and experience. As you can see, we are very heavily focused on applications of new technologies into these B2B enterprise areas. A lot of focus on AI, natural language processing, computer vision, blockchain, and 5G. So that's a quick introduction to the Hive. So let's move into the topic, the panel topic today. Again, welcome all of you. Thanks a lot for joining us today in this panel discussion about the future of fraud. We've titled it Fraud in 2030. We know it's a dark and murky topic, and we hope and pray none of us has to deal with any personal or professional experience with fraud in this decade. Even if we don't deal with it personally, the reality is that we end up paying for fraud in every transaction that we make, in every relationship, a commercial relationship that we have. Every time you swipe your card, the credit card network is charging the fee for all the credit card frauds from the merchant, which is transferred back to you. Every time you pay an insurance premium, the price that you pay in the premium includes all the cost of fraud that happens in the insurance industry, and so on and so forth. Every time you open a bank account, the bank will kind of charge for the fees that account for all the fraud that happens in banking, and so on and so forth. It is estimated, I looked up some analyst reports, it is estimated that the annual cost of fraud that the global economy and our society bears overall was a little over $4 trillion, with a T, $4 trillion last year in 2019. That's a humongous cost that we all bear, and that cost translates into the fee and the prices that we pay in every transaction that we go through in our day-to-day life. So the insurance industry plays a pivotal role in translating this overall burden on our economy into individual transactions, because it's the insurance industry that protects all of us, both personally and commercially, against all kinds of fraud. And therefore, we couldn't have a better panel today to discuss this topic and go into the depths of how fraud is evolving and what we can expect going ahead in this decade. And therefore, we brought together two very bright minds from the insurance industry to help us feel this juggernaut and kind of understand what's going on with respect to this topic. So we have with us today Vivian Lee from Avanta Ventures. Avanta Ventures is the venture arm of CSAA, which is the insurance company behind AAA and other auto and home insurance products. We also have with us Maneesh Madan, who is an industry expert, especially in the risk analytics and insurance analytics area, having a rich experience in the risk analytics industry. He's now an entrepreneur, having founded a company called InsurAnalytics. So I'd like to start this panel by requesting our panelists to give us some introductory comments. Particularly, I would also request them to talk about one new pattern in fraud that has intrigued them, that they're tracking or tracing. And I also request the audience members to think about new kinds of fraud that you might have heard anecdotally, or you might have seen some of your friends or colleagues have experienced. We would love to keep this entire panel very interactive with the audience. I'll be tracking the comments in the Q&A box and asking our panelists to speak more and analyze some of the new information that you guys will share with us. So with that, I'll hand it over to Vivian for her introductory comments and then further to Maneesh.
Hi, thanks for having me today. Very nice to see that so many people are participating today here on this interesting topic. So I'm from Avanta Ventures. Our fund was started back in 2017, and we've got 3 verticals that we focus on: InsurTech, mobility, as well as adjacency, which includes bundling with financial services and other items that would improve the customer experience. If you've got an interesting startups, we'd love to talk to you. So come join us. So I want to answer Kamesh's question. I think from an insurance industry perspective, we're spending more time on cybersecurity as well as on identity to make sure that, you know, when an agent is talking to someone on the phone as a policyholder, that the policyholder is actually who we thought he or she is. So there are a lot of technology that the insurance industry is leveraging to help us achieve that. And then, of course, there's a lot of focus on cybersecurity as well. So we have also recently invested in a company called Cowbell Cyber that is in the cyber insurance space.
Got it.
Back to you, Kamesh.
Awesome,
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kamesh. Appreciate it. We at InsurAnalytics actually are deeply embedded into detecting and then helping companies, enterprises, specifically insurance and P&C, figure out fraud in a number of different ways, and specifically around claims, right? You know, our whole goal is to actually help companies automate their processing of claims using AI. Now, of course, automation goes hand in hand with trying to figure out things which are potentially fraudulent or which are, you know, the fact-based fact checking. It becomes very critical if you want to automate anything. So we are you know, an industry leader in that space. We are still a young startup, but we feel we have technology that can help companies quite a bit. Now, to answer your question directly, Kamesh, what I would say is there is going to be a tug of war, right, between enterprises and fraudsters, right? So enterprises more and more are going to be looking at technologies like AI, right, to detect more fraud. But one of the trends which is very intriguing and very interesting that is happening is that fraudsters have started using AI to actually defraud companies, right, and enterprises. I mean, just last year, there was an incident where an energy company in UK, a senior executive got a call from his CEO to transfer more than 200,000 euros. And of course, you know, if CEO asks you to do that, you'll do it, right? But eventually they figured out that was actually a call which was where the impersonation of the voice was so good that he felt it was CEO, but actually it was a fraudster who did that. And so I feel that the biggest trend we'll see will be sort of this, as I said, tug of war between enterprises and fraudsters using AI to actually, you know, enterprises using AI to catch fraud, and then you know, fraudsters using new ways to actually commit fraud very creatively. And I think we are just at the beginning of that phase.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your introductory comments, Vivian and Maneesh, and thanks again for joining us today. So when we think of fraud, we typically get reminded of the iconic film Catch Me If You Can, and Leonardo DiCaprio's role in showing the human charm in deception, both behaviorally and of course through things like wet signature and all that. But unfortunately, right now we are living in a such a hyper connected and digital world that fraud no longer needs human deception. It no longer needs a particular place or a particular time to get frauded, because we have devices that are constantly connected all the time, and we have digital avatars of ourselves, which can be accessed, deceived, or manipulated at any point in any place. It doesn't really require us to be in a particular vulnerable state or time whatsoever. And this relates back to Vivian's comment about digital identity, and how these digital identities, which have given us so much convenience, so much of connectivity, so many applications, have also opened us up to a much broader 24/7 risk surface or attack surface that can be leveraged to defraud us. And while there are technologies that have tried to bring biometrics, bring aspects of our presence and existence, like fingerprint and voice and face recognition, etc., in order to make these digital identities more and more safe. Like you rightly pointed out, Maneesh, there are also equally capable technologies that can fake our most sensitive, most intimate identities like face and voice, etc. So I would love to open up this topic with Vivian, to get her kind of comments and insights into how digital identity, which was meant to be a agent of security and privacy to us, is slowly also becoming an attack vector. And would love to pick this topic up with Vivian.
Yeah, so we think about this from kind of multiple perspectives, and I agree with Maneesh that AI is being applied to a lot of these different technology. Actually, it's being applied everywhere. So because there is a proliferation of different data that the InsurTech and technology companies are using to evaluate whether something is real or not, you really need the AI technology to process all these data to get to the results really quickly in a split second. So the way that we think about it is from an underwriting perspective, from a claims perspective, and also from kind of the back-end agency perspective. And so, so from an underwriting perspective, we've got a lot of good companies out there, like one of our portfolio company, Cape Analytics, that uses aerial imagery to help us underwrite homes, so that instead of asking the policyholder, how old is your roof, what kind of condition your home is in, we're basically leveraging these data that would be able to tell us by looking at all these different sources, how good of a condition the roof is, so that Cape Analytics actually gives a score, and we can use this for underwriting purpose. And from claims perspective, there are different companies in the field that actually allows you to use self-service underwriting, self-service claims. So the policyholder can use a phone camera to take pictures of the condition of the damage at the home or even of a car, and that get processed automatically. And a lot of times companies will provide an estimate on how much the damage is. And so it's a lot harder to actually defraud the insurer when you file a claim. And of course, typical things such as, just taking a picture off of your laptop of a picture of a damage, or using an assisting picture from where you download it from the computer, that no longer works. So a lot of these companies that looks at claims can, take care of that and flag that as fraud. And then from an agency side, because we've got insurance agents that are regularly talking to customers, or even a chatbot that is talking to a customer, they have the ability to detect whether they're talking to that specific policyholder based on the voice, based on the information that they're collecting, and of course, also based on pictures. So at the end of a call, beginning of the call, you can ask the policyholder to take a picture of themselves. They can compare this with different sources like Facebook to make sure that that's actually the person that they're talking to. And then there are also technology out there to detect, a signature to see whether that's a fraudulent signature or not. So there are a lot of different ways to help us be a lot tighter from a security and fraud perspective in the industry. And a lot of this have already been used in financial services for many, many years. But I think that we're seeing that insurers are also adopting a lot of these technology as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Vivian. So, Maneesh, we also have a question related to this topic, apart from some other comments you might have to both of the panelists. So, Alan asks about the Internet Identity Workshop, which is going on. I think there's a session going on today as well, and particularly the concept of self-sovereign identities and distributed identities. And I think, Vivian, you were alluding to the distributed nature of validation, so that you have kind of multiple proof points which are independent of one another, which perhaps relates to some of the concepts of distributed IDs. So Maneesh, Vivian, would love to also hear your thoughts on this particular question that Alan has asked.
I can definitely chime in. And Vivian, brought in some very good points actually. The effort to actually digitally identify, an individual has been going on for a while, right? I mean, if you look at, but mostly, if you look at, okay, let's take a step back, right? I mean, if you look at how we used to identify people, it was mainly government IDs like driver licenses and passports were the choice. But in the digital world, those things don't really work, right? I mean, I can definitely fake those very easily. The way companies have tried to gotten around it, right, is using peer-to-peer security. What it means is I have a user ID and a password into a bank or into an insurance company, wherever it may be. But those have limitations. I mean, I'm having a hard time remembering all my passwords to the number of sites that I go to, right? And then there is the federated identity, which is means to say I'll use a single source of truth, right? A singular place where my IDs, if you look at Google ID is used by a number of different websites. Same thing with Facebook, right? I mean, I can log into a number of different places using Facebook and Google. But there also, the challenge is that if Cambridge Analytica and Equifax hacking, is any proof, a single point of failure occurs, right? I mean, people can hack into it and actually assume and get access to a lot of data, and that's where the promise of distributed identity is. What that means is and blockchain is a big enabler in that area. And I feel the future of identity management is going to be distributed, because there are a number of different trusted sources like DMV, government, who will actually put signatures and certify the certain things, and then you have a key which uniquely identifies those aspects into a distributed identity framework, right? And that is not owned by anybody, and it's blockchain, so. Potentially, you could say that it's immutable to a large extent and can't be hacked. There is still early work going on, but I feel that's where the future is headed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maneesh. Vivian, any closing thoughts on identity before we move to the next topic?
Sure. I think that we're also living in a world where commercial and personal are converging. We can think about the gig economy when a driver is actually no longer just driving for one or the other. They're basically doing both. And so it becomes more complex to really understand when a person calls the insurer, are they reporting on a personal accident, or is that related to a commercial incident when they're actually driving for, say, Lyft or Postmate? So we're relying a lot more on these data out there that Maneesh was talking about, because you really have to rely on these data to decide or to determine whether one is actually driving, for grocery, or they're actually working. So because of these convergence, it's becoming more and more important to actually relying on these existing or external data.
Absolutely, Vivian, and thanks for that comment. It's a good segue into the next topic, which is digital misrepresentation. There's so much of our personal data and professional data that represents what we do, who we are, what activities, what preferences that we have. For example, LinkedIn, you could arguably call it a professional profile, but it's equally personal because it contains details about your location, your educational background, and so on and so forth. And when business processes and enterprises start mining this type of digital representation of individuals, and start making decisions around pricing, around scoring, processing applications, especially in an industry like insurance or banking. It obviously opens up a lot of risks around how somebody's digital representation can be hacked or manipulated in order to affect that person adversely, or how a person maliciously can misrepresent himself or herself digitally. So maybe we can start with Maneesh about his thoughts on this topic, and then move back to Vivian.
No, sure. So I think if you look at industries, across the board, insurance included, and I'll speak a little bit specifically around insurance. If you look at risk assessment today that insurance companies do, underwriting process, that's completely going digital. What that means is companies are going to be using a lot of data, right, across the board, digital information, to assess and figure out what the risk profile is, right? And to eventually say, okay, this is what the premium is, right? And even on the claims side, reconstructing what actually happened, right, is again usage of enormous amounts of data that companies are going to be using. Now, of course, what that also means is fraudsters have equal opportunity, if you will, to actually fudge that data, right? We spoke of examples about somebody faking somebody's voice, but in areas of insurance is actually even more prevalent, which is today companies are using videos, right? Dash cams. Tesla has, videos built in to adjudicate claims, to actually figure out what actually happened, reconstruct the incident, if you will, right? And images as well. And those are actually very, very, those are a breeding ground for creating, fake assets, right? And then pass it on, and then, use that information to defraud or file a fraudulent claim. And I see that, companies have to invest heavily, a lot more, into actually catching those things, or to actually represent, or to figure out what assets are synthetic in nature, right? Synthetic videos, audios, pictures, and investing in those, along with investing to figure out what, using digital assets to make determinations is going to be key. So the trend I see is there is going to be heavy investment from insurers as well as other companies to actually figure out what is false and what is true, both in terms of digital assets. There are technologies that again exist today, right? Both blockchain and AI have a lot of promise to actually figure out what is true and what is false. Also, another thing that I would say is corroborating evidence, right? there's going to be, so you can't really rely on one source of truth. So you have to corroborate and figure out a number of different data sets to reconstruct the truth, if you will, and figure out where the anomalies are. And I feel that's where the trend is going to be as well. A lot of investment will go into that field as well.
Absolutely. Vivian, any further thoughts on the representation and data that people share digitally and fraud-related risks around that?
Yeah, we basically all the vehicles that we're driving now, at least the newer ones from 2015 and onward, they're connected vehicles. And so insurers have the ability to figure out if I'm the one driving the car or if my husband is the one driving the car, or if someone else is driving the car. So it's a lot more difficult to defraud the insurer, just because, you know, those data are being leveraged. You can actually tell who's driving the car just using the data and based on the pattern, the routes, and a lot of different things. I think on the positive side, these technology, you know, not so much as a big brother on watching, you know, someone is lying, but it's also enabling a lot of innovation that helps driver become better at driving. How do you find the safest route? What, you know, in addition to the fastest route, you know, there's an accident on the road, you can actually avoid that. And so, of course, that's making everyone's life better. But then, you know, it also benefits insurer in a way of having a much lower loss ratio. And then we've, as CSAA is also looking, spending a lot more time on commercial auto as well. We have a division called Mobilitas that is working with Lyft. And so you've got commercial fleet also is having ELD devices that tracks, you know, how specific commercial drivers drive. All these data is being used to, you know, help the commercial drivers become a lot safer, and also allowing them to have much better fuel efficiency, for example, and to see, you know, who are the drivers that are causing the least amount of accident, or who are the ones that have the most risky behavior, so that those can all be improved. So I think the data is, you know, of course, it's helping with the fraud, but at the same time, it's also making everyone's daily lives a lot better as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian. So perhaps we can move to one of the most talked about fraud topics, which is social media, particularly in this election season, given what happened 4 years ago. There's obviously a lot of spotlight around social media, advertising in social media, opinion kind of creation in social media, etc. And also in popular culture, we have you know, movies like The Social Dilemma that we've all seen recently, as the younger Gen Z and the next generation of younger people come into the economy. How do you guys see social media evolving, both as a source of crowdsourced trust, where you can use social media as a independent kind of data point for validation, as well as what kind of new risks do you see in actually taking social media almost as a system of record, which it has almost already turned into. You know, you always look up somebody's LinkedIn or Facebook profile, you know, before you're meeting somebody for a job interview or even a business meeting. And I'm sure in a few years' time, we'll all be looking at one another's TikTok profile or some other new platform that is out there around the corner. So maybe we can start with Vivian and then go to Maneesh on your comments on that.
Sure. I think that social media is actually really changing how insurers are looking at small commercial market, because you can just get so much information that just previously did not exist. So just to give a very simple example, if a business owner runs a cafe, there are actually a lot of different variety of features of a cafe that can change the risk profile of this cafe. For example, do they actually have open mic at night? Do they decide to serve alcohol? You know, like, do they have a patio outside that people can sit at? You know, obviously, you know, depending on what street they're on, the risk profile is different. And a lot of these are not consciously reported, I suppose, before. So if you just look at the industry code of the cafe, it's just a cafe. But all these information are now available on the website of this cafe or even on Yelp. So you can actually, with AI, you can mine all this data and intelligently underwrite this specific business based on all these information. These are not, necessarily data that was on a predefined, 30 questions list that an agent could ask before, because there are just so many variety of small businesses, and it's difficult to be able to cover all of them. So now AI can actually do this, and I think that this is a great innovation that really helps the small businesses to have the right type of coverage, and of course it helps insurers as well.
Awesome, thanks, Vivian. Maneesh, I would also couple a question along with your comments on social media, which I think is quite related. Gopal here is asking about the role of AI and particularly the adoption of AI in property and casualty, P&C insurance, and maybe in terms of both startups and kind of disruptors using AI to change the industry, and also the incumbent adopting the technology in a big way. Maybe after you, Maneesh, Vivian, you can opine on the adoption of AI within CSA. Maneesh, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So I think Vivian brought up some excellent points on social media data, right? I mean, there's a lot of rich information available. The question is obviously, which is, can somebody intentionally either hack that data or so if you look at social media networks today, they've been pretty clear. They are not the arbiters of truth, right? They're not going to fact check for you. So the question becomes a little bit around, can we use technologies? Again, the richness of information is there, but I think separating fact from fiction, again, on the social media side is going to be key if you want to use AI there to help assess risk or make other determinations, right? And that's not an easy task, right? Obviously, lots of technology, lots of different things need to happen. Today, think about it. All of us have sort of doubts around, elections or facts around, one way or the other influencing the election, outcomes. So it's such a big thing like that, right, is even doubtful today on social media. But that said, there is significant amount of richness and data that is available that you can't really ignore it. So I think what we need is a trust network of sorts to be established so that you can easily segregate fact from fiction. But I do agree with Vivian. There is enough richness available in the data today that you can make meaningful insights out of it and make determinations which otherwise, and again, it's all about behavior too, right? Which is, the insurance industry has never really looked at behavior data to assess risk in the past, right? But that's changing. I mean, we want to look at driving behavior. We want to look at spending behavior. We want to look at what you do with your home. Do you leave your lights on, or do you risk your home unnecessarily by heating it too much? So stuff like that, right? So that data is important. My point is that there is significant work that needs to be done to figure out fact versus fiction, right? That's on the.
Yeah, I really
please.
agree with Maneesh on that. I think that it's really important that the AI engine actually triangulates different data sources to make sure that the insight is actually a fact rather than just anecdotal evidence, for example. I think that a lot of companies are doing that, but I think that Maneesh brought up a really good point.
And to answer Gopal's question directly, I would say again that today companies don't have much of a choice, right? If you want to scale anything in catching fraud, you do need to use AI. Adoption will be key. I think the choices will be either do it the old-fashioned way, and then the fraudsters become smarter because they are using technology to actually commit very creative fraud, right? And we know training the workforce and training changing internal processes, it takes time. It's not easy for enterprises. But the technology with AI, at least, is that it can detect new patterns. It can look at new things without actually you having to train anything. And so to answer that question, I would say we've been slow in adopting AI in the industry. I feel insurance industry has lagged a little bit, but definitely there's increased awareness that companies need to do that in order to scale. Otherwise, consumers suffer, companies suffer, and we all pay. Like you said, Kamesh, at the beginning, as a society, we pay at large, right? Cost of services go up. And unfortunately, when that happens, low income people suffer the most because they either can't afford the service or the quality of service suffers. So it's a big cascading effect that we need to be aware of. And I feel AI is definitely one of the technologies that can help mitigate that risk.
Yeah, and I also think that it's not a static thing that one source is better than the other. One of our portfolio companies, Kin Insurance, which is in the homeowners area, they're more sophisticated than we are from the perspective of leveraging third-party data. So we have a lot of discussions with them to learn from, kind of what they've learned. And a lot of time it really depends on the specific context. And so sometimes, source A might be better than source B, but, it could change, because the data changes and also the circumstances or the context of specifically what happens, also changes. And so I think that it's really important to understand that dynamic nature of the data that we're dealing with right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maneesh and Vivian. And Vivian, any particular information you could share about CSA's overall kind of journey in adopting AI or any new digital initiatives that you could talk about?
Yeah, so we are definitely stepping up in terms of adopting the technology. We have a pretty sophisticated data science team that is spending a lot of time to understanding what are some of the key companies that we can work with to help with that. So one of the examples that I can give is we have done pilot with self-service company, for example, that I talked about at the beginning on underwriting and on the claim side, so that we can basically leverage these companies to improve the customer experience when it comes to claims. Also speed up the claims process and the underwriting process. We've also done pilot with a data company that looks at psychographic data to see how we can actually, target customer better in terms of, getting the right type of insurance policy, and then also using that from a churn perspective to see how can we control the churn of the company. And then, of course, identifying fraud as well. So we're definitely doing a lot from a AI perspective and leveraging the different data and technology out there to improve our processes.
Awesome. Thank you, Vivian. So the next topic I'd like to move into is the topic of devices, and particularly with the advent of IoT and so many millions and perhaps billions of devices that are expected to come into the network over the next several years. So two challenges the way I see it. One is, in a way, devices assume our identity. Whenever your phone is connecting to the internet, it's using a token that was issued to you as a user or a member of a particular app. But devices also need to establish their own identity so that there is no trust and assurance that it is indeed your device asserting your identity in the internet. And obviously, we have seen in Black Hat events one after the other a number of attack scenarios where devices can spoof and assume our identity while you don't really have control on the device whatsoever. There's also the other part, which is related to how devices themselves interact with one another. We all have seen the Amazon dash button and so on and so forth, where devices are actually using sensors and other kind of inference mechanisms to make decisions on behalf of a user or a natural person. So both in terms of the trust a device can hold in representing a person, and also the fidelity and validity of decisions a device can make on behalf of a person. Would love to hear both your kind of thoughts, both from a risk and insurance angle, and also from a pure trust angle. Maybe we can start with Maneesh and then move back to Vivian.
Oh, absolutely. I think there is, as I said at the beginning, there is going to be increasing adoption of, using different sets of data, heterogeneous sets of data, right? I mean, and sensor data is one of the key that insurance industry has been looking at it. I mean, if you look at, insurance as a product, it's based on the fact that I assess this based on certain attributes of a person, but that's not really the most accurate way to actually do it. And the technologies didn't exist, so I don't think we had a choice in risk pooling at that point, right, a few years ago. But today, as Vivian was also mentioning, that there is cars and including some of the devices, cell phones, all of that is generating data, right? I mean, the amount of data that is generated is enormous. And you can actually figure out behaviors, both on the underwriting side as well as to figure out whether, what happened during an accident, right? So that you can validate a claim, right? Now, there is obviously, again, the flip side of this is that can somebody fake or hack into such devices and fake that data? And recently I read an article where, somebody used sound waves to generate accelerometer data, right, which was fake. And now the question becomes, again, validity of that data. If I can do that and send that as vehicle data to my insurance company, I can all of a sudden, paint a very good picture of what actually I want them to see, right? And so the usage of that data will actually go up, but I also feel that that again, in order for us to make better use of that data, the validation becomes a key. Also, one of the other things is there are privacy regulations. CCPA is a prime example, right? I mean, California is leading the way in consumer privacy, and regulations will play a big part on what data can be used and what cannot be used. And again, trusted source becomes an issue as well. So to me, there are two problems that we need to solve there, right? One is to assess deepfakes in even sensor data, right? Which is going to be, again, increasingly difficult. We spoke about videos and audio and other things as well, right? Digital photos are easy to fake, right? But even sensor data is actually, now people have realized that actually it's not that straightforward, that you can trust it altogether. But also the trend, we can't really go back. So if you have to look at consumer behavior or driving behavior or customer behavior in general to assess risk, we have to figure out a way to use this data. Again, the technology to figure out what is fake versus what is genuine is going to be key in this case as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Vivian, any further thoughts and experiences particularly?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned a couple of examples even earlier in the session. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I was just thinking of the Amazon scandal that happened maybe last year when if you have Alexa, which I do everywhere in my house. So I remember that if you're calling Alexa, they're actually collecting data in the background. And so then they can actually figure out like who is in your house. And so all of that, Alexa actually can automatically figure out right now, but that was a scandal at the time that people didn't know that it was collecting all these extra data. So it's really privacy related. And so I think that was kind of a good example to kind of think about IoT device. So it collects a lot of data. And the combination of different data from the different devices can figure out a lot of things about the household. And so there are companies out there that are helping the aging baby boomer population to say, if they're able to figure out what time the grandma wakes up and takes a shower and, eat, they can also figure out when grandma is not doing that, so something might be happening. So it might trigger a call to grandson or to the hospital to make sure that grandma is actually okay. And so kind of on the flip side, if someone takes over all these different IoT devices, that can also be very detrimental because it's collecting a lot of privacy information about you. And so there's certification out there that makes sure that these are kind of cyber protected devices, so this doesn't happen. And cyber insurance can also help protect the personal insurers to make sure that they're okay with all these different devices on the house. And of course, we've also heard about someone being able to control a connected car. And of course, that's, very scary because you can get into an accident if someone has bad intention. So I think that, manufacturers and OEM already have that in mind, and they're making sure that a certain minimum level of cyber protection is already there in a connected vehicle or on these IoT devices at home.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian. So in fact, I personally am a user of Google Home, while I also have an Alexa, but I use the Google Home more because Google Home in the app setting has an optionality to make it not record your voice. It responds to it, but you can turn off the recording. I don't think Alexa might have it, but they've done a good job hiding that option. It's not easily accessible. So yeah, we are living in scary times out here.
And also,
Maneesh, you're saying something? Yeah.
No, I was going to say that we are surrounded by all these devices and they're generating a lot of data. So privacy is going to be one of the key issues that we have to deal with when enterprises use this data. And insurance being heavily regulated industry, I think there's a lot that we need to figure out there. And one other thing that I think is going to happen definitely in our lifetime is smart roads, right? So roads eventually will have a lot of sensors, right? A lot of data will be collected by roads as well. When that happens, I don't know, but again, there will be a proliferation of devices around us generating huge amount of data. The question becomes again to how do we make it safe and address those privacy concerns that Vivian was talking about, right? It's a very good example of what adoption can lead to, unintended consequences, I would say, right? So that's going to be the key.
Absolutely. So we have an audience question from an anonymous attendee about unstructured data like images, video, voice in both claims adjustment and through agents, I presume, like brokers, etc. So any insights that you guys have about unstructured data significantly changing the turnaround time or accuracy of claims processing?
Yeah, I can chime in first. Yeah.
Sure.
And so I'd say that insurers so far have kind of not looked at or ignored that part of the picture. There's a rich amount of information if you look at a history of claims, right? Insurance industry is not new. People have done very complex claims, looked at very complex scenarios in the past, and they tend to repeat, right? And bulk of that information is stored in people commenting and saying things about, oh, I found an experience, just write down how I solved that problem, right? And human beings, we are not very good at reading a lot of textual information and comprehending and making quick decisions, right? So that's where I feel the unstructured information, being able to derive meaning out of it and insights out of it, and being applied to serve their customers, the insurance customers better, is going to be one of the key trends. So both, again, videos are going to be big. Even I would say images are already playing a big part, and textual information and voice information, right? There's a lot of interaction we still do on phone, right? It's not that we write letters to each other and figure things out. We are probably texting and doing those sort of things, right? Interactions are mainly through that mechanism. And again, using that information is going to be key again to I agree that to solve problems in a more expeditious manner, also more accurately as well.
The computer vision that Maneesh talked about. So that's being widely applied on insurance from the perspective of what I actually talked about on both claims and underwriting side. And so, for example, Cape Analytics that I mentioned, they're using the pictures of the property and they're using computer vision to figure out how much, for example, yard debris it has, what type of roof it has, what is the shape of the roof, how good or bad of a shape it is, using it to score. And a lot of self-service company are using computer vision to do claims, so they can actually figure out, like what is the extent of the damage of the car, or what is the water damage at the home, automatically generate a measurement, and then also estimate on how much it costs to fix. So all of these is using computer vision. And then, of course, insurance is notorious in having a lot of forms that, policyholders have to send in. And so that also is using, unstructured data technology to actually ask intake on the key information on these forms to turn them into structured data for analysis. And then another key usage is the loss run. There are companies that specialize in just analyzing the loss run. And so I think that, I think that insurers are really catching up on, having to analyze these both structured and unstructured data these days.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian and Maneesh. So we had two topics that we wanted to discuss. Given that we have just 3 or 2 minutes left, maybe I'll combine those two topics and get your insights on the combination. I think they're kind of related to each other. One is this advent of gig economy and trust in crowdsourced kind of credibility and reliability, like we have seen with Uber and Airbnb and DoorDash, etc. We obviously expect many other services to adopt this crowdsourced credibility and trust going ahead, not just the ones that we have seen in the last decade. And secondly, this whole kind of disaggregated, decentralized collaboration that this pandemic season has kicked off. It's largely believed that this is not going to revert back to how it was last year overnight. And the shadow of this pandemic might last for several years leading into this decade. Which again, means that we are going to be collaborating in a decentralized way and perhaps relying more on gig services. Like instead of going to a shopping mall, we rely more on Amazon and its delivery. Instead of going to a hotel, we might prefer to go to an Airbnb, which is a bit secluded and so on and so forth. Would love to hear both of your thoughts on how do you see fraud evolving in this growing gig economy and growing kind of remote collaboration and kind of remote work. So maybe we can begin with Vivian and then go to Maneesh.
I think a lot of it is going to depend on the regulation on whether the driver is going to be classified as full-time, because it really impacts the bottom line. I mean, I feel for the drivers, but everyone in the industry is waiting for how that is going to turn out. I don't think that the gig economy or even like rideshare is gonna go away. I mean, even during COVID, the business has obviously gone down, but people are still using it. I've used Uber, I've used Lyft, you know, multiple times. And they're able to figure out new business models like delivering for food or delivering items. I think that the industry will figure out. We have a lot of smart minds in the gig economy, and also I think it's a great innovation to actually leverage the capacity of these cars that were not used before. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think it'll come back up at some point.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian. And particularly also a lot of capital riding on the gig economy. So I'm sure they have the brightest minds cracking those types of problems. Maneesh, would love to hear your thoughts on these two topics.
Absolutely. I think I'll quickly, I know we're probably up against time, but Vivian brought up some very good points. I don't think gig economy, if anything, will actually, increase exponentially. One of the key cornerstones, though, for gig economy is a trust factor, right? Which is because of the nature of digital, transaction, and typically transaction happens even before you either, use this service or, at the quite a bit before you begin to use the service. And I feel again, decentralized, trust mechanisms are going to be key to actually for gig economy success, because trust becomes again, as I said, foundational for people being able to use that service. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Vivian and Maneesh. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today. I'm sure our audience also enjoyed our panel session. We look forward to having you back again sometime in the near future in the Hive think tank, and also look forward to doing more events with Avanta Ventures going ahead. So I'd hand it over back to Matty, and look forward to joining all you guys soon again. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian and Maneesh and Kamesh, for an amazing panel. And thank you, audience members, for joining us today. I dropped links to our YouTube, to our meetup page, and also if you have time for a brief 5-question survey so we can tailor events to your needs, that's awesome. And that's over in the chat. Thank you again so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at more events. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.